Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we review an absolute banger from the state of Kentucky, and that is Michter's 10-year bourbon. Run the video. Alright folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode here on the Whiskey Cove, where we will be reviewing this bottle. That is the Michter's 10-year bourbon. So this is really interesting. This is the 10-year bourbon from Michter's, and they've only had the Louisville on Whiskey Row location for 10 years. So this really signals a turning point. This is a 10-year bottle of whiskey, and there's rumors that they did source a lot of their whiskey and barrels before they moved into that distillery. There's been some discussions on the internet that they did source from Old Forester, and they might continue to do so. However, I assume most of the newer distillate you're probably getting in kind of their entry-level bottles, like the US bourbon, the American whiskey, is probably their own stuff right now, unless they're still back mixing some of it. So this is the Michter's 10-year here. I paid $195 for this bad boy. Kind of. So I bought this from the distillery in Louisville, Kentucky, but I had to buy it with the US bourbon one, and it was like $250. And they tend to do that quite a lot. They tend to pair the allocated whiskey with some of their cheaper entry level stuff. I don't like that. However, this is maybe sometimes an easier way to be able to get to allocate this stuff. Whiskey bottle, it's a cool looking bottle. I like the black and gold label. The wax, I'm not too fond of that. The whiskey cap is real cork, so we'll definitely give it a little kudos for that there. MSRP on this, like I said, under 95 bucks, and the ABV is 47.2%, ABV on 94.4 proof. So a little bit of a lower ABV proof whiskey. Usually I like my ABV to sit 50 to 60% ABV, or 100 to 120 proof. However, I do think there's a place for aged whiskey around this proof point. Just looking at the whiskey in the glass, it's kind of leaning more towards like brown to mahogany. There's definitely a darkness to it, but I will say it doesn't look thick in the glass. It kind of looks pretty light. I am getting a lot of bourbon notes just kind of as I'm rolling it in the glass. And when I nose and taste whiskey, I'm not trying to whip it up like wine, because I have a feeling, I have a belief that it kicks up a lot of the ABV, and that kind of detracts from some of the flavors. But I feel like if you're rolling it in the glass, then the whiskey is going to sit to the glass, and it's going to burn off some of that proof. So you really get a nice little bit more of a sweetness kick. And that's what I'm really getting from this right now. Really nice, like candied cherry with a lot of brown sugars there. Really nice oak through here. Very, very approachable on the nose. There's no ABV whatsoever. Very sweet, very brown sugar forward, huge cherry notes. I will say, as you can see, I've drunk a lot of this whiskey, and the best component of this whiskey is definitely the nose. Because this nose, if there's someone who wants to drink whiskey neat and really likes to nose whiskey, then I'm probably giving them this bottle, or giving them a pour of this bottle. Maybe some bubblegum-esque there too coming through. Yeah, just very inviting for a taste. So let's do that. Michter's 10 here. For all the great things that happen on the nose, there is definitely a decent amount that transitions over to the palate. You do get a little bit of rye spice there, which really helps this bourbon. Because on the palate, if that rye spice wasn't there, it would fall very flat, especially for what it is. You get a good drawn out finish with some of that spice, and it carries through a little bit sweeter to the end of those brown sugars, that cherry bubblegum note. But the 10-year bourbon doesn't really dry out your palate, and maybe you could say that that's good because it's all well and balanced. But because it's so well balanced, the finish is a little on the kind of medium to short side. And when you think of aged whiskey, you really want it to kind of kick up a little bit more tanniny, and I really don't get a lot of oak tannins for this. And for me personally, when I drink whiskey that is aged and I get a lot of oak tannins, that really lends to the finish. Let's go in for another taste here. Mouthfeel, It feels good on the mouth, it tastes good on the mouth, but it doesn't coat the mouth. It isn't rich on the palate, it's not oily. I'm not chewing through it. It does hit your palate, it tastes nice, and then it kind of disappears a little bit there. So, like I said earlier on, I do feel that the nose is definitely the best part of this whiskey. I think it's a great bottle of whiskey if you have a person that you know who's trying to get into tasting whiskey neat and you kind of like them, then I think you want to give them this as opposed to like the US bourbon, because I think they would really appreciate some of those complex notes that maybe a novice whiskey drinker would like in a way. So on this channel, we do a value for money, A through F. And then we also do a score of 100, 0 to 100. And as always, we'll put the grading scale on the screen here. So value for money, $195 for a 10-year bourbon, sub 50% ABV, with a not great finish, but a very good nose. This is a D. You know, I want to say D, but I'm actually needing to E, which is somewhere between D and E, but because I said D first, we'll go with a D. Like I said, nose is great, it has some nice components on the mouth, but value for money, it's crazy for $200. There is so much more better whiskey out there than this for $200. I just don't really see the value in this bottle at all. I'm a little disappointed that Michter continues to increase the price on this. Yes, this had a pretty good reputation, but that doesn't mean it should double in the course of 3 years. So score out of 100, I'm going to give this a 68. There are some components of this that I do enjoy. Like I said, the nose is very good. The palate just lets it down. It's so thin on the back end, it kind of just dissolves away. And when you're paying $200, you kind of want it to do much more than that. And some of you folks at home might be saying, well, you know, it's a low proof 10-year whiskey. Maybe you just don't like aged whiskey. So I would disagree with that. Like stuff like Weller 12, I really like that. And that's a lower proof aged whiskey. And 1792 from the age 12 years. I love that bottle. And that's a lower proof ABV there too. So it definitely can be done. What would I change? I think you need a little bit more rye in the mash bill, because it just drinks a little too soft on the mid palate that doesn't carry on through to the finish. It just drinks a little thin. Obviously not as thin as the US Bourbon 1, but for a $200 bottle of whiskey, I was expecting more. So there's the rating, 68 out of 100, D value for money, and we were lucky that it got a D. If you disagree with that rating, you disagree with that value for money, let me know down below. But you know, in conjunction to a lot of what I try, I think that's very well scored. As we drink through the world's whiskey, one glass at a time. If you haven't already, don't forget, sign up for our lottery that we're doing. Go down below, click on the link. You have to be a subscriber. You can win some awesome bottles of whiskey for absolutely nothing. Cheers.